Welcome to episode 2 of Peace Talks. Uh, Different background, different look for this episode. Still saying, let your life be your sermon, which, as I shared in the first episode, has been my tagline for a number of years. Um, welcome. Peace Talks. I just want to keep saying that again. I had many people reach out and share about the first episode. This is 9 parts initially. We'll continue. Should it be something that people are engaged in? But I was just thinking, and I was sharing with a friend today, how I believe it's important that I be a part of filling the atmosphere with conversation around peace and how we get there relationally in the workplace, in our communities, in our schools, on social media. What can we do to heighten the possibility of peace? And so in this 30-minute episode, I just want to share a bit more about peace and this notion of, and I'm going to put this on the bottom so it's going across the ticker. Uh, I'm going with peace. Just want to share with you personally why I'm going with peace, why I think peace is important, why I'm choosing to go with it when there are alternatives and maybe other possibilities, why I think it's practical. I want to talk a moment about the practicality of peace. I want to share with you that for 2 to 3 of our episodes, I'll have some special guests that will talk out the topic of peace with me and give us some tools and some insight on how to move forward with peace. I just want us to keep looking at I'm going with peace, because even today, as I was looking at the tragedies and the things happening in Gaza, I want to point out again that I'm a peace worker, peace walker. I think peace talks should yield peace walks and peace work. And so every day I'm looking at petitions and different ways to protest. I want to remind you all too that everyone's form of protest is not in the street. I've called every congressperson, senator in my state. I'll call congresspeople, senators in other states too. They responded and I responded back, sharing about, I believe, the power of my voice and giving my input and pleading with and imploring them to do something to bring a halt to the violence and the deaths and the destruction that's happening in Gaza to Palestinian people currently. And I've urged them to be peacemakers, to determine to sit down and say we want hostages released, and we also want lasting peace in this region. And where there's been violence over the years, we want to be a part of ending violence and oppression with Palestinian people, deaths of Palestinian and Israeli children, checkpoints, the different things that are in place that cause harm daily and that cause tension, but then also escalate to violence. We have to pay attention to those things. Sometimes we don't pay attention to the need for peace until there's war, and we have to stop that. Because as I shared yesterday in episode 1, peace is a process and it's a proactive posture. It's not something we just yield to and wield when war and violence breaks out. Peace is something we have to work on every day. Check that out. I have to work on peace in my mind, in my heart, and my soul, and my spirit every day. Peace in my atmosphere and what I bring and where I go. Every day I have to work on it. Peace is a process and a proactive posture. Listen, pause for a moment. If you would, invite some folks to join in and to hear, to listen, to watch based on ability. We may have some people who can't hear, but they can actually watch and use closed caption and they can see what I'm saying. We may have some people who can't see, but they can actually be attentive and be a part via hearing. Either way, people with different abilities, we want to invite you in and invite everyone you to copy this YouTube link and share it out. Copy and share this Facebook link if you're watching this on Twitter, X now. I'm going with peace. I'm going with it, and I'm going to tell you why. Peace to me is practical. I want to share for a few moments about the practicality of peace. Listen, I almost want to just put my hoodie on and chill for a moment, because I want to just share in a real clear way. Sometimes we believe violence is the answer, because violence looks easier, right? It's just something happens that we retaliate, and we would call, in a lot of instances, retaliation justice. And I'm not just talking about war. I'm not talking about the tragedy and the bombing by Israel of Palestinians, or the tragedy we're watching as a world in Congo and Sudan and Afghanistan and Yemen, and the tragedy in this nation, even of human trafficking and violations with gun violence, our inability to stop our children from being injured and shot in schools, and uh, the ongoing gun violence in places we don't talk about, that we almost don't even mention in the media, that in some cities, some communities, our children and adults, our neighbors in this nation face gun violence every day. Because, excuse me, that there are often moments where violence seems more practical. It seems as though we want to just get rid of people who are harming us, and not just physical violence, but even in our places where we work, in our schools. They're not lining up with what I want people to look like, what I want them to do, how I want them to behave. How do I get rid of them? And this is something we have to be attentive to, because peace is not just about ending physical violence. Peace is about psychological violence being halted, legislative violence, that violence that oppresses people and causes them to have to be in one place and be under dictatorship and under rule, that causes them not to be free. Violence has many iterations, and we have to be attentive to what violence looks like in order to even get to peace, and to understand that violence is not practical. Violence, in fact, would cause us to believe that by getting rid of someone, I can get rid of ideology. And it's not true. When I watch, they call them neo-Nazis now, walking down the street, I start to think to myself, bless God that Jewish people and Romani people, gypsies, as they're sometimes, I believe, erroneously called, but that's the common name you would know them by, is people who had disabilities, people from different backgrounds that Nazis didn't believe should exist, were liberated, that we were getting rid of the Nazi ideology. And again, bless God, we freed people. We had the sense to know people needed to be free. But what we didn't do is work to rid humanity of that thinking. And so we recently in this nation had a president elected that seemed to bring back the thinking that was associated with Jim Crow, and people thought that was gone. But what people who have to live with racism every day knew was that racism didn't go anywhere. It just kind of festering on the surface. So what peace work does, peace talks, peace works, peace walks. What that does is it causes us to see that peace is practical. Peace not only says, let's examine the roots of violence. Peace says, let's build a pathway so we won't go back to that violence again. And what we really need to work on as humanity is building and creating pathways to lasting change, sustainable change, so that some of the ideologies and the harm that we see, it won't come back. So often what we do is we return violence for violence. And what that does is it creates more bitterness, and it creates more wrath, and it causes people to, if they have an ideology that's destructive, go build it even more. And we sometimes are not willing to examine what preceded violence. And I'm not even talking about actually Palestinians and Israeli people. I'm talking about daily, day by day situations where we won't even examine in our daily conflicts that could escalate to violence, what got us there. So if we're really going to go with peace, I'm going with peace. We have to be willing to do some internal checks. What causes the reactions that I have on social media? Listen, people are wilding out on social media. I am every day looking, and I'm taking a social media break this weekend, truly, at the things that people are saying. Some of them not even anymore hiding behind fake names and fake photos, just the real Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian sentiment, anti-Semitism, uh, the things that we're saying that could incite more violence, versus simply saying things like, let's get to peace. And I'm willing to be a peacemaker and be a part of the process. Our leaders in Congress in the United States, there are not many of them at all. I've only seen a few who are saying, let's make peace. And it's not just about one group of people being okay, because that's not what peace is. Peace says every party that's a part of this, let's get to the place where they're not diminished, they're not harmed. And I know if you're hearing this, you're going to the extreme. Some people, that when you start talking like this, they start thinking about the most extreme cases. Well, what about Hitler? Well, what about this group? Well, what about this person who did all these diabolical things? What about Hamas? What about the people now who are bombing folks in Palestine and don't care? Um, we want to go to the extreme instead of dealing with the places where we can work. And what we have to do more than anything with peace is say, who do I want to be? Because if we had more people who were concerned about the character and the atmosphere that they bring, even to the legislative body, then we would have more peace, more humanity, more grace, more honor, more justice in this world. But as long as people are unconcerned, like I'm unbothered, but so many people, so many of us are unbothered by how we show up for humanity. And it really just becomes a matter of, I want to be right. But peace causes me to say, I have a higher concern than being right. Check this out. Peace makes me ask, am I righteous? Wanting to be on the pathway to peace causes me to ask, not am I right, but am I righteous? I'm going with peace. I'm going with peace. I want you to ask yourself that question the next time you're in a conflict and you just want to persist and insist that you're right. Is it more important in this moment that I demonstrate that I'm right? Or do I want to be righteous and contribute to something that's sustainable, that would help stop humanity from ushering in our non-existence? Listen, there's a statement from Dr. King that I found, I think about every day now. He said, our choice today is violent co-annihilation or non-violent coexistence. And if you hear that word nonviolence and you start thinking passivity and it doesn't work, and it's just something that causes us to align ourselves with injustice, then you misunderstood nonviolence. And I encourage you to study it with King Center, KingCenterInstitute.org. Go on over there and take a class, because nonviolence, as Dr. King taught it, is not that. Go study and get some understanding that what happens when we're on the pathway to peace and we have a way that we're going to get there is that we determine that who I am has to line up with where I'm trying to go. Ooh, I almost want to make me happy. Who I am has to line up with where I say I want to go. So if I say I'm going with peace, then I have to be peace. I can't go with peace and I can't get to peace unless I'm willing to become peace. And that's hard, right? Almost, you want to fast, you want to pray, you want to figure out, if I'm contributing to what I see in this world, how do I help to not do that? How do I start to shift and to change? I'm going with peace. I'm going to just put that hashtag out there all day today. Hashtag I'm going with peace. I'm just going to post it over and over and over again, because we're talking peace, but peace has to become something that we walk, and it becomes something that we work. It is practical, more practical than a desire to annihilate, and more practical than the idea that by getting rid of people, we're getting rid of a problem. We have to understand that the only way we're going to deal with the mentality and a spirit of violence and a nature of violence is to get to the place where we shift even our very language. Our very language. I want to go ahead and share what I want you to work on today. Yesterday, you were supposed to examine your social media language overall, but with particular attention to social media. Today, I want you to think about your commentary. Commentary means, what things do you say about what you see and what you've heard. And I've been over the last few weeks examining my commentary, and I've been ashamed in some moments too. You ever think back on something you said and you say, shame on me? That wasn't peaceful. That wasn't kind. That won't cultivate a great, honorable community. And these are not small things. If you're thinking what that lady is talking won't help us not get to a place of war, then I want you to consider how now our very elected officials, our very own elected officials, sometimes use discourse and language that contributes to violence. Stand in caucuses and places and on the House floor where they could be speaking peace and working for peace and do the opposite and cultivate violence. And that's a choice. But we also have a choice to go with peace. And I'm not saying these things to diminish people. I'm in no way insulting anybody's personhood. I'm just saying simply that we have to put a demand on even our political and especially our political leaders who are should be charged with and focus on creating policies that honor humanity and help us to create community. It was never about, we just want these folks to prosper. A leader, a true leader, authentic leader should be a peacemaker. We slap leader on a lot of things, but to me, when you say someone's a leader, is someone who's influencing for good and for greatness. So we need some leaders that are going with peace. We need some faith leaders that are going with peace, that are willing to be peacemakers and not just people that pray for one region. We need some Christian leaders who are saying we're not going to use scripture to focus on one group of people or one nation being well, that we understand that in the divine, there's love for all. We need some leaders in every sector of society who might not even call themselves leaders. Because I think to some extent, all of us are leaders and we need to be peacemakers. I'm going with peace. I want you to examine your commentary. I'm going to be examining my commentary today. Listen, I know I'm going to see some stuff today that I just may want to say, oh, that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I may want to type it. And then I have to ask myself, is that what I want to put out there today? And I may want to examine and find a way to share what I'm thinking without diminishing a person. And we might not believe this, but I'm telling you, the more we diminish, the more we set up the atmosphere for peace to not be possible. I want peace to be possible. I'm willing to give peace a chance. I am. I'm willing to examine, not in a way that makes me a person who that's all I do. I just sit around thinking, am I peaceful? I have fun. I do things. But in a way that makes me understand that I have to play my part and do what I can as a human being to make us more humane. It's important. So today, examine your commentary. Even with people, you can get off the phone with folks and you just start to go to other people and say, I just had this conversation, blah, 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 and it ain't good stuff. Or you look at what's happening in African nations, or you look at what's happening in Gaza and with Israel, and you start to make commentary that's based on biases and prejudices. And you realize even with what's happening in African nations, we're not even really hearing about that. If you ask why, then you also should be asking, how will we get to peace when there's some people we even exclude from the peace conversation? We don't even ask for or seek peace or even become concerned about peace for people in some nations or with some backgrounds and ethnicities and races and religions, cultures. So if we say we're going with peace, one of the things we're going to do today, I'm telling you, I'm checking myself out. What's my commentary? Sometimes I can get off a Zoom meeting We sometimes, if we're not careful, we'll have commentary while we're in meetings. We'll be on Zoom typing things up. See, this is that work we can do that's not about, I want to do work to fix something that's just happening with groups of people. It's I got to fix some stuff in me. If we're going to have lasting peace, then we have to do an inside out work. I got to work on me. And then I'm also going to work on policies. I'm going to work on legislation. I'm going to work on my language. I'm going to work on culture. I'm going to work on meeting critical needs, but I'm also going to work on transformation so that those critical needs won't exist anymore. It's a part of peace. So sometimes we think philanthropy is peace, but it's not. Philanthropy is not peace. When I see people say I want unity, what I realize for some of us is that unity means I just want to say I gave, and I want to be able to say there's not tension anymore. And where I live, I want to say people aren't being shot. But do I care about peace in other communities? Do I want peace in my zip code? Want peace with everybody that looks like me, thinks like me? Or do I want peace to be universal? These are our questions. And then what's my commentary based on that? When you watch the news, what's your commentary? What's your commentary? What are you sharing? I got like 7 more minutes. I don't want to take more than 30 minutes each day, but I want you to put out there, I'm going with peace. I'm going with peace. This is important. This is important. Now, for these last 7 minutes, I want to walk you through some practical things that we can do, because we want to talk peace, but we want to walk it. We want to walk it. I talked yesterday in episode 1 a bit about the need for research. I think that was in this episode I had yesterday. I talked to a lot of people. I had a speaking engagement, and then I did peace talks, and everywhere I go, I'm trying to elevate and lift the conversation, which I believe will lead to lifting the work and having more people committed to love-centered strategy. What I want to see and what I believe and what I'm hopeful for, which is not naive, is in the Middle East, there being no more people oppressed, no Palestinians who live with the fear of being bombed, no Israeli children, no Lebanese children, any children in that region who live with the fear of being bombed. I want people to not be put out of their homes, Palestinians to be able to live in their homes and not be put out. People not to be displaced. I want that for any people, for people to be displaced. And I pray for us to learn how to negotiate for peace. And more specifically, what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called true peace, which, as I shared yesterday, he said is not merely the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice. We got to want that. And what I'm seeing on X and on Instagram and on Facebook is we want peace for some, but not peace for all. And now we have to say, I just don't want peace for my people group. I want peace for all. And if we say that, then we have to sit down and negotiate for peace. But if we're not willing to do that in our families and with the people that we see every day, how will we negotiate for peace long term and on a large scale between nations and between people? This is real talk. We struggle to negotiate peace on social media or to negotiate peace as legislators. I mean, we have 2 parties in this nation. Some of them refuse to work with each other for the good of all. How then would we negotiate peace between people who experience conflict and great pain and hurt, and in some instance, hatefulness with each other for years, where people's parents have been blown up and their children right now being blown up? And how will we have the maturity and the understanding of the practicality for peace to not only pray for it, but to work for it? I want you now to write down what you would like to see in terms of peace for a group that maybe for the past year or more or less, you haven't been thinking peaceful thoughts about. And I'm not talking about extremist groups. That's a different level of conversation. That's a spiritual thing where you get to the place where you can say a hate group, I want to see them change and shift. I'm not even asking you to go there today. I want us to start with just a group of people or one person who you've had conflict with, or you have been taught that you shouldn't care about them and want peace for them. What's one thing right now concerning peace that you want to write down that you want for that group? This is where it starts. I'm going to change my mind, and then I'm going to say I'm going to talk peace. We got to get more peace talk out there that leads to peace work and peace walks. We want action that's aligned with our thinking. But then we first have to change our thinking. We have to fine tune our spirits, get our souls together, because we have work to do. And it's an inside out work. One group of people, write down one thing. One group of people that maybe in your family, in your faith, in your religion, in your culture, you were taught they're not as important as you are. It's one of the things I've been dealing with this last year is the idea of less than. And we all have that. We learn somewhere that there's some group that's less important than us. And it shows up in our commentary and what we put on social media and what we say to each other every day and what we think and what we do. We think it doesn't, but it does. If we've learned anywhere that there's a group that's less than, I'm not as concerned about them being blown up, about them being hurt, because I've learned something and accepted something that makes me okay with their suffering. We have to check that. We have to check that. I'm going with peace. Write that down. The second thing is write down an affirmation and something that tangible that you're going to work on. I'm going to work on my language about a group of people or about one person. I'm going to be more informed about what's happening in the Congo and Sudan. And then I'm going to follow that being informed up with some work and some contributions to change. I want everybody who doesn't know what's happening in Congo right now to look it up, to look up Sudan, to understand what's still happening in Afghanistan and Yemen, Jackson, Mississippi, Flint, Michigan, what's going on right now with some of our young people in Chicago, our young people in other cities. Let's pay attention. Don't pay attention in a way that causes you to have despair. Lift that attention up in a way that causes you to be hopeful, because hope is this thing that I see it, and I believe if we all come together and work on it, we can change it. Hope is not passive. Peace is not passive. I am absolutely going with peace. And I want you to join me tomorrow and the next day through next Friday, November 10th, as we continue our time together. Got 1 minute left. Tweet it out, share it with people, put this episode out there. If I shared anything that you find postable, put it out there, hashtag I'm going with peace, peace talks, tag me on it. I just want to get this out there and start some different conversations and some work. Peace talks, peace works, peace walks. Let's do it together.